Nerdcast assemble!
Stay dandy, baby. You know, when I first started watching The God of High School, I really liked it. Fun little martial arts show, really cool action, fun and wacky characters. But after this episode right here, I have to ask myself 6 words. What the hell is going on? The weird shit-o-meter goes off the rails in this episode. No longer is the series content to simply just have a one-on-one fight going on. This is an episode which kicks things up to a brand new level. Massive gods flying out of the sky, Ilpio in his god fox form fighting against Jegal Taek, who looks like he's been infected with the G virus, not to mention a massive alchemaic magician who manages to make all of the citizens in the entire city suddenly just disappear and get transported away before the entire city is blown up by the frickin' US military. Yeah, it was a pretty insane episode. And you know what? They don't even really take the time to explain anything. They just sort of like take everything, put it in a bucket, and just sort of dump it over your head throughout the course of the entire episode. And while it does look really cool, I just kept asking myself, why? So let's unpack some of the finer details which went on in this episode. So, Ilpio and Jegal are still continuing to fight in the city, and both of them are bringing their A-game to the table, with Ilpio using the Fox God powers, and Jegal being some sort of weird, freaky monster man. I don't even know how to describe his abilities outside of the fact that he can summon a giant shark and spikes or teeth, but also he has like these weird things all over his body which can summon tentacles, he can absorb things, he can summon a giant monster which can eat people. It's just weird. I'm not sure what his powers are. Basically, I think it's whatever the creator of the series wants it to be at the moment whenever he is on screen. But we actually do get to learn a little bit more about his backstory in this episode, which is done very briefly, where apparently his mother sold him off to some old rich man when he was a kid, and this old man taught Jegal that power is the only truth in this world, and everyone else is just a loser. He even goes as far as to actually end up killing this guy, and basically it shows that Jegal had something of a messed up upbringing, which is why he views everyone as beneath him. And it looks like he actually obtained his powers from Nox. At least that's the insinuation in this episode, which is the one that allows him to summon all manner of creepy monster magic. Speaking of Nox, basically this entire episode is that one dude with the crazy symbols in his eye who is suddenly trying to summon a massive god from the sky, which takes the form of a giant black entity, which suddenly transforms into a Buddha statue, which face opens up revealing a weird demon. Okay. Park Mugen is trying to hold it off, doing everything that he can while everybody else is trying to fight against Jegal. Ilpio ends up getting severely damaged with the key being removed from his body. The key is actually a physical object here. I thought it was just a metaphor for the person and their godlike power, but no, it's a tangible object which apparently is needed and everybody really wants it for some reason. Jegal in particular seems to want to do this so that he can unlock some weird, crazy godlike power, more on that later, and we get to see that basically it's just more of this massive confrontation, and all of this eventually leads to the overall destruction of Seoul. So, like I said, the US Army realizes that some crazy, weird monster shit is going down, so they decide that they're basically just gonna nuke the entire area. And right before this actually ends up happening, you have Jeon Jason, who is the grandfather of that one dude who transformed into the monster in the last episode, and he wants to get revenge for his grandson, so he actually decides to go up against this member of Nox and utilizes some crazy powers to transform these missiles into a giant collective group of heads, which then slams into a barrier, causing a crazy amount of destruction in the process. It makes no freaking sense. And before all of this happens, Mori and his friends, and Ilpio, his friends, and even Jegal are suddenly sent away to some random temple somewhere where they proceed to just start fighting willy-nilly out of nowhere. Again, it all looks really awesome and the choreography is great, but just man, it just moves at such a breakneck pace that you can't even really keep up with any of it. And then eventually it all ends with a really crazy fashion of Jegal actually ended up taking this key, shoving it into his weird abdominal mouth, and then suddenly he transforms into a baby, which then grows wings, which then grows into a weird freaky angel, which then suddenly transforms into a crazy demon version of Jegal with horns and an eye in his forehead, and basically it looks like we finally reached the boss of the latest Final Fantasy. And so, what's the rundown on this episode of The God of High School? Is this even a martial arts tournament anymore? Sometimes the pacing of a series can be good, sometimes it can be bad. this one's kind of in between for me. While I really did enjoy this episode, mostly for the spectacle and the visual and just the overall craziness of it, I mean, this episode is chock full of some really crazy imagery, whether it's giant monsters, the dude flying around on a giant dragon with a fire staff, freaking Joker with his giant scythe, the battles between Mori and Jegal, getting to see the fact that Daewee has his very own Karyok abilities, which allows him to summon some weird mystical healing water. Everybody gets to do something really cool in this episode, but man, it is just a hodgepodge of absolute craziness, a margarita of madness, if you will. And if you're into that sort of thing, you're definitely going to like the episode. If you want some explanation behind all of this and how it works and what the key really is, and Nox and Mugen and his group and the US Army deciding they gotta bomb everything in sight, well, it's kind of a crazy episode to say the least, and it doesn't make it bad, it just makes it feel a little disjointed and insane, and maybe that's the feeling that they were actually going for. But by the end of the episode, I just found myself scratching my head wondering, what did I just see? I mean, there's a great moment in this episode where Mori wakes up and he's like, what happened? And you know what? I'm on the same wavelength. Like, what's going on in this episode? And what's the deal with the key? It just doesn't really make any sense. But at the end of the day, I think that's kind of the entire point of everything that's going on here. It's controlled chaos, and it's an absolute feast for the eyes. Not the best thing that I've ever seen, mind you. There are definitely some weaknesses when it comes to the animation in some of the parts of this episode, and I do feel that some of the earlier episodes actually looked a little bit better when the fights were a little more grounded. I don't know why that is, but that's just the way it is. Once you start introducing monster powers and all this other crazy stuff, sometimes it just ends up being a blur of ridiculousness. But again, it still manages to be really entertaining at the end of the day. And ultimately, that's why I ended up liking this episode, and it's got me interested to see what's going to happen next when they fight against freaking evil demon Jegal. I can't wait to see how it's all going to go down. I have a feeling that Mori's probably also going to finally tap into that weird godlike power that we saw a couple of episodes ago, and maybe we'll get to see all of the other characters do something. I think that would be pretty cool. Otherwise, in the words of Ricky Ricardo, God of High School, you got some splaining to do. Otherwise, I enjoyed this episode. I did think it was a little weak in terms of actually understanding what was really going on here, and the fact that they're just trying to keep everything in the dark and mysterious. But overall, it was an absolute spectacle for the eyes, and it was insane. I didn't expect that it would get this crazy this early on. So yeah, it was some pretty cool stuff. So I'm going to give this episode a 4 out of 5. I really did enjoy it, but I really want to hear from you guys. That's the reason I make these reviews. Please tell me what you thought about the latest episode of The God of High School and all the craziness that's going on in it. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Any favorite character moments? What do you hope to see from the rest of the season? Let's discuss all of it in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Please subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this one. If you liked this video, summon your godlike power and smash that like button. I would also like to thank all of my patrons who've been checking out my Patreon page, making donations, giving me feedback on the channel. Remember, first-time donators, I'll review an anime series of your choice, and I would love to add your name to this list of super awesome people. Join the Ace Guru Nation today. So thank you guys so much for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down there, baby. So let's unpack some of the finer details that are...